1 square kilometer of land. Tokyo, 1989. By market valuation, more expensive than the entire state of California. Not a building, not an oil field. Land beneath the palace where one person lives. This country, in 40 years, traveled from ashes to the top of the world, and then spent the next 34 to return to the same spot. How is this possible? And why is it bound to happen again? August 1945. Japan signs the surrender. Cities are scorched, industry is destroyed, GDP about 1/5 of its pre-war level. The country that sought to conquer Asia is now fed by humanitarian aid. It seemed like the end. But it is precisely from this point that one of the most incredible stories in 20th century economics begins. In 25 years, Japan builds what the world will call a miracle. Average annual GDP growth, 10%. Not 2, not 3, 10. Toyota, Sony, Panasonic, not just brands. Weapons. By 1968, Japan overtakes West Germany and becomes the second largest economy in the capitalist world. Everyone expects the top spot is next. But here's the first question most don't ask. Why did the country with the world's best industry suddenly stop growing and couldn't restart for 30 years? The answer lies in one decision made by one person in December 1989. In a few minutes, you'll understand why that decision was simultaneously right and catastrophic. To understand the crash, you first need to feel the euphoria. Tokyo, 1988. Nightclubs don't close until dawn. Taxis during rush hour only stop for double fare. Otherwise, the driver won't bother. An office clerk who invested savings in stocks a year ago has doubled them without working a single extra day. Land in the Ginza district costs $1.5 million per square meter. Banks give loans against any collateral because the collateral grows faster than the debt. The logic is simple. If land appreciates 20% a year and the loan costs 5, why worry at all? The math works. Everyone has a feeling impossible to put into words. The feeling that this is forever. And here's what isn't usually told about this euphoria. Japanese companies back then gave employees interest-free loans to buy company stock. They called it caring for staff. People took them. Bought. Stocks rose. It all seemed right. But the bubble didn't appear on its own. It was created. Intentionally, or through short-sightedness, is a question still without a single answer. September 22, 1985, New York, the Plaza Hotel. Behind closed doors, the finance ministers of the world's 5 largest economies meet. The US, Japan, West Germany, Britain, France. American exports are suffocating. Japanese goods are too cheap. The yen is too weak. The solution: the yen must rise. The market must reflect this. The agreement is signed. The yen doubles in 2 years, from 140 to 70 yen to the dollar in purchasing power terms. Japanese exporters panic. Their goods have instantly become more expensive for the entire world. The government orders the Bank of Japan compensate for the blow, flood the economy with cheap money, stoke domestic demand. The bank cuts the benchmark rate to 2.5% and holds it there for 3 years. Cheap money sought returns. Industry is saturated. Where to go? Into stocks, into land, into even more land. Japanese banks, tightly restricted by regulators in normal times, received tacit permission. Lend against real estate collateral. Real estate rises, so the collateral is safe. The circle closed. Cheap credit to land purchase to price rise to new collateral to even cheaper credit. Stop for a second. If everyone saw this, why did no one stop it sooner? The answer lies in the system's very structure. The Japanese financial model had an unspoken rule. A bank never lets a major borrower fail. Never. Economists would later call it the convoy system. The whole column moves at the speed of the slowest. If one starts sinking, the others help carry it. It seemed like protection, stability, no upheavals. In reality, it was a trap, because a system where you cannot go bankrupt is a system where you also cannot make mistakes. And that means you cannot correct them. December 29, 1989. Tokyo Stock Exchange. The Nikkei 225 index closes at 38,915 points. No one knows this is the peak. Newspapers write about new records. Analysts predict 50,000 by next year. But that same December, Yasushi Mieno takes the helm at the Bank of Japan. Tough, independent, convinced. The bubble must be stopped now before it destroys everything. Mieno spoke of painful but necessary surgery, and he started cutting. First rate hike, December 1989, then another, and another, 5 times in 15 months, from 2.5% to 6%. Remember this move, 2.5% to 6%? It will come back. And then you'll decide for yourself. Was it a life-saving operation or a shot to the heart? The Nikkei loses 40% in 12 months. Land starts to fall and won't stop for 10 years. Banks open their books and discover collateral, against which trillions of yen were lent, is now worth half the debt. What does a normal bank do in this situation? According to the textbook, recognize the loss, close the loan, book the losses, move on. In Japan, they don't recognize it. They wait. Continue lending. Hope prices return. This decision, to wait, would stretch the crisis into 3 decades. This is where the phenomenon that would enter the textbooks is born. A company is technically dead. Debts exceed assets. No profit, no prospects. But the bank doesn't call in the loan. If they call it, they'd have to recognize their own losses. And the company keeps operating. Not living, existing. Occupying offices, paying salaries from new loans, blocking jobs that could have gone to viable competitors. Economists will call them zombie corporations. By the mid-90s, they permeate the entire Japanese economy. Now, what isn't usually spoken aloud. The Japanese economic miracle was never truly a market one. The Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of International Trade and Industry decided for decades. Which industry gets credit? Which doesn't? Toyota grew, not because the market chose Toyota, but because the state chose Toyota. It worked during the Reconstruction period, when it was clear what to build: steel, ships, cars, televisions. But when Japan hit the technological frontier, bureaucrats didn't know what to build next. The market knew, the internet knew, venture capital knew. But they weren't asked. And here's the main question this story poses without an answer. If the non-market model delivers 10% annual growth, is it a good model? And when it breaks, who pays? Not the bureaucrats who made decisions in closed rooms. Ordinary shareholders who lost their savings. Workers in zombie companies stuck in dying structures. The young, for whom there were neither jobs nor prospects. November 1997. The Asian financial crisis reaches Japan. Banks, having hidden losses for 7 years, start falling one after another. Sanyo Securities, Hokkaido Takushoku Bank, and then Yamaichi Securities. one of Japan's big four brokerages. 100 years of history, founded in 1897. Debt, 3.2 trillion yen. The company is shut down overnight. The next day, President Suzuki Shiro faces the cameras. He doesn't read a statement. He cries, publicly, before the whole country, and says, the employees are not to blame. It was a press conference, and the most honest thing the Japanese financial world had uttered in a decade. Why did the U.S. in 2008 handle a crisis of comparable magnitude in 5 years, while Japan couldn't escape for 30? The answer lies in the speed of accepting reality. Economist Richard Koo, who studied the Japanese crisis from within, described the mechanism precisely. In his concept, it was a balance sheet recession. Companies don't invest not because they don't want to, but because all resources go towards paying down debts accumulated during the euphoric years. Lower rates or not, it doesn't matter. No one takes new loans until old ones are cleared. The economy freezes, doesn't die, freezes. The U.S. in 2008 recognized losses immediately. Banks were recapitalized within a year. The Fed flooded the system with money without hesitation. The recession lasted 18 months. Japan postponed recognizing losses for a decade. The result? 30 years. 3 things combined to make the crisis irreversible. Mieno raised rates too sharply. The bubble didn't deflate, it burst. That's the difference between a controlled pressure release and an explosion. Then the convoy system turned losses into something perpetual. Capital frozen in zombies didn't flow to new industries, and Japan missed the technological revolution of the 90s. And on top of all that, demographics. The country entered its aging phase precisely when consumer demand was needed most. The elderly save. There are few young people. Stimulating is almost impossible. 3 factors. 1 outcome. And this is happening right now. In another country. On another scale. China, 2021. Evergrande, the country's largest developer, announces a debt of $300 billion. Hundreds of thousands of apartments sold and not built. The state keeps the company in a semi-zombie state, neither bankrupting it nor saving it. Restructuring. Again, it's the same construct. The state decides where money goes. The market is silent. Cheap credit. Real estate bubble. Admitting losses is more terrifying than the losses themselves. Chinese economists read the Japanese crisis like a textbook. The question isn't whether they know the history. The question is whether they can act differently. Time is the only thing you cannot borrow. First, we borrow against a future that seems inevitable. Then we spend the present, paying for the past. Real wages in Japan by 2020 hadn't exceeded the 1997 level. By some data, the proportion of 40-year-old Japanese living with their parents reached levels unthinkable for post-war generations. The country that in 1989 bought Rockefeller Center in New York for $846 million, sold it back at a loss of over $1 billion. Without revolutions, without riots, in silence. That is Japan's strength and Japan's price. That square kilometer of land under the Imperial Palace. In 2024, it's worth significantly less than in 1989. The palace is in the same place. The land is the same. But the price was determined by people. And they were wrong for 34 years. And one last thing. What isn't usually spoken aloud. February 2024. The Nikkei, 225, finally surpasses the peak of December 1989. Japanese media wrote, Historic achievement. Think about that again. 34 years to return to zero. And they called it an achievement. Is China following the same path, or does it have a chance to exit differently?